Let's start the meeting. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Linton, President of the Colorado Motor Vehicle Dealer Board. Today's date is August 5th, 2020, and the time is 2:02 p.m. I will be presiding over this emergency rulemaking hearing in accordance with Section 24.4.103(6)A of the Colorado Revised Statutes. These proceedings are being recorded as is standard practice of the board. Notice this emergency rulemaking meeting was announced via an agenda notice issued on August 3rd, 2020. As noticed in the agenda, in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and emergency, this meeting is being held virtually using Cisco WebEx and is accessible to the public. At this time, I request that the board members, the executive secretary, and the representative from the Colorado Attorney General's office identify themselves for the record. Starting with the board members, I'll just go down the list and I guess say that you're here. So we have Ms. Bumgart.
I'm here.
Thank you, Ms. Behrens.
I'm here.
Is Mr. Flower here? I don't believe Mr. Flower is on. Is Bode on? She is not on. Mr. Porter, not here as well, I believe. Mr. Walsh?
I am on.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. And Mr. Woodhelm? Mr. Woodhelm?
I'm here. Mr. Woodhelm is here.
Perfect. And then, Executive Secretary?
Yes, this is Chris Rouse. I am present.
Thank you. And Mr. Jones from the Attorney General's office?
Yes, Bradford Jones from the Colorado Attorney General's office, here representing the Colorado Motor Vehicle Dealer Board as well as Law.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. It looks like we have 5 board members, including myself, so I've determined that a quorum of the board is present, so it is possible to proceed. Specifically, during this emergency rulemaking hearing, the board will consider the following emergency rules. Motor Vehicle Rule number 4420-102-22-COVID and Power Sports Vehicle Rule number 4420-402-17-COVID. At this time, I'd like to call for a motion to open the hearing to consider the proposed emergency rules related both to 1 CCR 205-1 regarding motor vehicles and to 1 CCR 205-2 regarding power sports vehicles. Is there a motion to open the emergency rulemaking hearing?
This is Mr. Woodhelm. I'll make a motion to open the emergency rulemaking hearing.
This is Luke Walsh. I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Woodhelm and a second by Mr. Walsh. All
President
in favor?
Linton,
Yes.
just as a reminder, because there's only 5 of you, you will have to.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Jones. All in favor of the motion, Ms. Bumgart?
Yes.
Ms. Behrens?
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Linton is also in favor of the motion. The motion to open the rulemaking hearing passes unanimously. Due to the emergency nature of these proposed emergency rules, this hearing will proceed in accordance with Section 24.4.103(6)A CRS and is not subject to the requirements under subsection 3 and 4 of that statutory provision. At this time, I will turn the hearing over to Chris Rouse, Executive Secretary to the Board and the Director of the Auto Industry Division, to provide an overview and background for the emergency rules. Ms. Rouse.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, board members, staff, and guests. There's no changes to the agenda as posted, and I'm happy to announce that on Friday, Governor Polis reappointed Ms. Bode and Mr. Linton to another term, so congratulations to them. As we all know, this pandemic has made 2020 a pretty rough year. In April, the board promulgated 2 emergency rules. Those rules have naturally expired. Therefore, there is no need to repeal those emergency rules. Mr. Jones has drafted new versions of the emergency rules for your consideration today. There have been numerous executive orders and public health orders over the past few months, and I'll save you all by not reciting all of them. However, I do need to create the record by stating the following. In an effort to continue to enable motor vehicle dealers, used motor vehicle dealers, power sports dealers, and used power sports dealers to continue retail sales and operations during the pendency of the COVID-19 emergency in accordance with Executive Order D 2020-044, Executive Order D 2020-079, Executive Order D 2020-091, Executive Order D 2020-123, Executive Order D 2020-127, Executive Order D 2020-138, Executive Order D 2020-142, Public Health Order 20-28, most recently amended on July 30th of 2020, Public Health Order 20-32, and other guidance issued by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, the Centers for Disease Control, and local county and municipalities. It's necessary to engage in rulemaking activities and to adopt emergency regulations 4420-102-22-COVID and regulation 4420-402-17-COVID. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Rouse. Do the board members have any questions for Ms. Rouse before we proceed? Hearing none, if there's anyone from the public who wishes to testify, please speak up. Please make sure to state your full name and the name of the organization, if any, that you are appearing on behalf of. Please attempt to limit your comments to 5 minutes. Does anyone wish to speak? All right, hearing none, we will move on. At this time, I'd like to call for a motion to close the public comment phase of the hearing to consider the proposed emergency rules related both to 1 CCR 205-1 regarding motor vehicles and to 1 CCR 205-2 regarding power sports vehicles. Is there a motion to close the public comment phase of the rulemaking hearing?
This is Luke Walsh. I'll make the motion to close the public comments.
Mr. Whithelm will second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Walsh and a second by Mr. Whithelm. All in favor, Ms. Baumgart,
Yes.
Ms. Behrens,
Yes.
and Mr. Lint and myself as well votes yes. The motion to close the public comment phase of the rulemaking hearing passes unanimously. The public comment phase of the rulemaking hearing is now closed. No further comments from the public or the division will be allowed without explicit recognition by the chair of this hearing. The board will now begin the deliberation phase of this emergency rulemaking hearing. The deliberation phase is open to the public, but only board members and the Attorney General representative are permitted to participate, unless the chair authorizes someone else to speak. Since there are 2 emergency rules, each rule will have to be voted on separately. Additionally, due to the emergency nature of these rules, the board must also vote to approve the statement of justification for each emergency rule in accordance with section 24.4.103.6a. Before I call for motions on these emergency rules, do any of the board members have any comments on the 2 emergency rules before we begin?
This is Mr. Whithelm. For the new rules, am I just missing that somewhere?
Mr. Whithelm, you cut out for a moment there. Could you repeat what you asked?
Yeah, I was just asking, I'm probably just missing it and overlooking it, but is there an expiration date for these new rules that I'm just not seeing?
So there is no specific expiration date that is listed. It is 120 days pursuant to statute. And again, just like when we originally adopted the previous emergency rules, if there's amendments or anything that comes up, we will address those in time, and that will be added. If there's a need to create newly adopted emergency rules, the board can move to delete or revoke previously promulgated emergency rules and create new ones. But the expiration date will be 120 days from today if the board were to adopt these rules.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones. I just wasn't seeing him, so thank you for clarifying that.
No problem.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, we can move on with voting for the rules. So, do I have a motion to adopt the proposed emergency regulation 4420-102-22-COVID and to authorize me as the president of the Motor Vehicle Dealer Board to sign the statement of emergency justification and adoption concerning emergency regulation 4420-102-22-COVID? Is there a motion to adopt?
This is Mr. Whithelm. I'll make a motion to adopt the rules as proposed.
Does that, and does that include a motion to allow Mr. Linton to sign the statement of emergency justification and adoption?
It does, Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
This is Carrie Baumgart. I will second.
Thank you, Ms. Baumgart. So we have a motion by Mr. Whithelm and a second by Ms. Baumgart. Any further discussion? All in favor, Ms. Behrens?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
I, Mr. Linton, am in favor as well. The motion passes unanimously. Next, do I have a motion to adopt the proposed emergency regulation 4420-402-17-COVID and authorize me as the president of the Motor Vehicle Dealer Board to sign the statement of emergency justification and adoption concerning emergency regulation 4420-402-17-COVID? Is there a motion to adopt?
This is Mr. Whithelm again. I'll make a motion to adopt and allow Mr. Linton as president to draft the necessary documents.
This is Luke Walsh. I'll second that.
Perfect. So we have a motion by Mr. Whithelm and a second by Mr. Walsh. Any further discussion? All in favor, Ms. Baumgart?
Yes.
Ms. Behrens?
Yes.
And I am in favor as well, Mr. Linton. So the motion passes unanimously. We've reached the conclusion of this emergency rulemaking hearing. I'd like to thank the board members who participated in the process today. At this time, I'd like to call for a motion to close the hearing. Is there a motion to close the rulemaking hearing?
This is Luke Walsh. I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
We have a motion by Mr. Walsh
A second by Carrie Baumgart.
and a second by Ms. Baumgart. Any further discussion? All in favor, Ms. Behrens?
Yes.
Mr. Whithelm?
Yes.
And I, Mr. Linton, vote yes as well to close the hearing. The motion passes unanimously. Therefore, I declare this rulemaking hearing closed. Ms. Rouser, Mr. Jones, do you have anything else to add before we sign off
Yes.
here?
As I mentioned in previous emergency rulemaking hearings based on this, the emergency rules are now in effect for motor vehicles and power sports vehicles as provided under 4420-102 brand 22 COVID and regulation 4420-402-17 COVID. And they will be posted to the Secretary of State's office. And they will be in effect for 120 days, meaning the end date will be on December 3rd at 11:59 p.m. unless adopted or amended by the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Bye.